I changed the world.
She changed the world.
He changed the world.
Has listening to the radio ever compelled you to change the world? Probably not. Well, maybe it's time it did.
Okay, well, I want to say it's the Corona Files. What the heck is going on in the world today? Today I'm joined by Brent, Marchant, and Sandra, Beck, and we're just going to have a discussion about what everybody is thinking about and talking about and worrying about. And, you know, frankly, it's everywhere. So I think it's called Corona. My Corona. What are your Corona days like?
Long, really long. I have to tell you, I have my 87-year-old dad here, and I also have my 16-year-old and 13-year-old sons, which is lots of boy energy. And for the last 5 days, Los Angeles has had 41 degrees and raining. So you can't even send that boy energy outside to run around because it's just miserable, muddy. And so my word is long for today. Long days.
Brent, how is your Corona days? What do they look like?
My days really haven't been all that much different from pre-Corona because I work in what's considered an essential service. So I'm still going to my job and coming home and going to my job and coming home. So in that respect, it's really not that much different, except for the fact that it looks like a ghost town when I go out on the streets.
Do you go to work with a mask on?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. What determines that?
Kind of depends upon what the weather's like, kind of depends upon how many people I see out, you know, things like that.
So you carry it with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not mandated yet, so, you know, it kind of, I let my mood kind of govern, you know, whether or not I wear it or not. But
how concerned are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that you might get it?
You know, I'm concerned, but I'm not paranoid. And that's one of the things that really is kind of concerning me with the way this has been covered in the media. There just seems to be such an incredible degree of fear-mongering out there right now. And I mean, yes, it's something to be worried about, but it's not something to be shaking in your boots to the point where you're paralyzed. And that really does concern me because I think that's going to do more damage in the long run, you know, in terms of the effect that it could have in terms of things like addiction, suicide, relationship status with people. Mm-hmm. They're going to be so preoccupied with this that it's almost like they're becoming kind of removed from one another. You know,
they did make the liquor store an essential service here.
So, you know, I've just been a little bit concerned that people are kind of overreacting a little bit too much. I'm not saying to let their guard down or to become careless, but, you know, to be practically jumping out of the way like you're going to get hit by a coming car when they hear somebody cough or sneeze. It's just, I think it's an overreaction. And that's what, like I say, that's what concerns me.
Well, you know, I'm going to weigh in here because I am undergoing cancer treatments for stage 3 melanoma, and I'm in the hospital every other week. And what the nurses said to me, which I thought was very interesting, you know, because I walk in the hospital, it's completely empty. You know, like not at all what you see on TV. Now, granted, it's Los Angeles, not New York. But she said so many people, she believed, from the fear, ran to the emergency room and clogged up the emergency rooms because they were so afraid they had coronavirus, and they had, you know, maybe 1 or 2 had it, but then they cross-infected everybody in that area. Then that group went, you know, was discharged, went home and carried it home to their populations. And that was her belief. And she said, you know, so at the specific hospital that I was at, which I won't name, she said, we've made the decision that everybody will be kept outside. Like when I went to have my treatment, my son sat in the car in the you know, parking garage. He wasn't allowed in. So you're only, and when you walk in the door, they test you. You know, they give you a temperature test. And then if your temperature is normal, you're allowed to go in and, you know, get your procedure done and, you know, do what needs to be done. But they're like, their belief was that the medical centers cross-infected more people than just the general public.
Interesting. Now, I'm in Canada, so it's not the US. And you guys are well over 500,000 cases in the US right now, which I think is phenomenally a lot, and more than anybody in the whole world, really. I would be a little concerned. I am concerned. I mean, we wash our hands with soap and water. When I bring the groceries in, I wipe it down with Lysol. I admit I do that, Lysol wipes. And then that's it. I put it away. You know, if I go to the store, do I put on a mask? Yes. Why? I'm over 60. You know, I'm in that group that may or may not survive it.
Right,
So
the
I'm
higher
going to
risk.
higher risk. I'm going to take my, take caution. And my kids are like, don't go out, don't do anything. They're not coming to visit. They're not visiting each other. What we are doing is we're doing a lot of Zoom. We're having Zoom family meetings.
Yep.
Tonight we're going to have a Zoom clue party. Just doing things family-wise as best that we can over digital media, which thank God we have. Could you imagine if we didn't?
Right?
Well, yes, and certainly, taking precautions like that, I think, is certainly prudent and fine. I don't see anything wrong with that. But like I say, the one thing that does concern me is when this ends,
Mm-hmm.
are we still going to be skittish of one another afterward?
I think we will be.
You know, if somebody's sneezing or coughing, I give them a wide swath.
They're not. I mean, they've already talked about we're never going to shake hands again, ever, and they think that's a good thing. Maybe we shouldn't have. I mean, that's how any kind of flu gets in. But that's what I've been hearing is that the age of shaking hands is over. So yeah, give people props. That's okay. Just like Howie Mandel did. He was afraid of shaking hands too. Right? Are
you kidding? He left his apartment in a Ziploc bag. Did you see
I know.
Covered from head to toe?
I mean, that is crazy, and I would hope that we will come to a comfortable place because our children have to enter, and our grandchildren and your kids and my grandkids have to enter this new world, and you don't want them to be where you're afraid of people. I definitely don't want that.
Exactly. But oh yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things when this first started, my reaction was initially emotional. I was like, what the hell is going on here? What's behind this and so forth. And in terms of some of the hyped coverage, that kind of only exacerbated it for me. But then after, I would say about maybe 4 to 7 days, I began to calm down. I began to feel a very interesting sensation of peace and calm overcoming, which I was not expecting, certainly in the midst of something like this. And a lot of that had to do with drawing from my metaphysical background, which a lot of it depends upon the philosophy of conscious creation or law of attraction, where I was saying, why are we collectively creating this? Why is this happening in this way? And I started noticing, and in a lot of posts on social media and so forth, people were saying that this represents an opportunity for us to start rethinking what we want for our future. And that seems to be growing in terms of like the number of posts I'm seeing and a number of people who I communicate with. They're all starting to say they feel the same way. And I think that's a really good thing. However, there are certain qualities that we have to bear in mind that are going to be essential if we want to, make that happen. And one of them is the idea of connection, the idea of cooperation, the idea of getting past polarization. But you can't do that if you're going to be afraid of even like facing somebody in public. I mean, so those two will just cancel each other out. So we have to start using what I call the power of discernment to figure out what's the balance, what's correct, what's adequate, so that we can bring about these changes while keeping ourselves safe at the same time.
Yeah,
and that's going to take some trial and error, I think, before we figure it out. But if we bear in mind that those underlying qualities ultimately are going to be what makes or breaks this work, we have to start addressing that and figuring out, okay, how do we exactly pull this off?
Yeah. Well, from a metaphysical point of view, if you want to take that route, I'll say that, I've always said that change happens best in chaos. So that we needed a change. We needed a huge change. And we were like spiraling toward this change. I mean, we're hitting the fifth dimension, right? I mean, we're going into the stage of Aquarius. And so we needed to have something so big and so loud that everything from the economy, everything is changing. We're now a people first economy, economic second. That's I think where we're headed. From another perspective, though, from this other perspective where I'm sitting and you're talking, things aren't gonna change until, as far as the virus and people going out and about, until there's actually some sort of protection in the form of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a shot, some sort of medical vaccination or something like that. Once everybody's vaccinated, it's business, it's business as usual as far as we can go back outside and we can talk to one another and we have a cure, let's say. And if we don't have a cure, maybe we have something that at least we can eradicate the virus when you do get it. So one or the other, vaccine or cure when you get to the hospital. But from the metaphysical point of view, we were desperate for this. I mean, look at our planet. They were, yesterday I saw all the posts that they could see the Himalayas in India,
right,
for the first time. Right? You see the maps over China and different areas where industry had stopped, and it was Mother Earth was healing herself. You could see it, like visually see it on the map. And so those were really wonderful opportunities and great change that we needed desperately. And it says, hey, you see, we can do this. There's
and we could do it quickly.
way to do it. Yeah,
right,
and quickly.
We can do it quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, who really would have thought that those kinds of changes would have occurred in like less than a month?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, but also, look at the social proof. Go on any social media and you see more and more posts about hope and kindness. And, we had just a vitriolic, cesspool of people on social media, just teeming with hatred.
Yes.
And I look at, my experience out here in Los Angeles where everybody was honking their horns and get out of my way. I've got to get there faster. And, people are, I think it's cosmically beautiful that the parents that I used to get so mad at, that faces were in their phones at their kids' events, their sporting events, their awards. The kid looks up from third base, makes a good play, and mom's not even, close to paying attention. And dad's on his phone, in the parking lot talking, that kind of work-life blur balance. Now all of a sudden, Mother Nature said, okay, everybody home. Go home, reconnect. And it's a forceful reconnecting of families that I see. But I want to address Brett's comment earlier about the long-term effects of social distancing. If we look historically at certain things that happened, especially during our lifetime or during my dad's lifetime, he's a World War II. He was 11 when World War II ended. So he has a lot of perspective on that. And, he's like, for the next, 10 years or something like that, people hated the Japanese in America. And then, after the terrorist attacks on 9/11, people hated the Muslims. I know that because my son's best friend is Middle Eastern, and the ridiculous refusals of allowing him to attend birthday parties or come into people's houses, was just horrifying. But like any pendulum swing, it eventually will come back to normal. And so there's going to be, I think, a bumpy ride for a while for anybody who might be of Asian descent, because there's a lot of hatred here for that. We can already see that brewing. But eventually, I think things will come back. The pendulum will shift back to, and we will hug and we will shake hands. I mean, people have been kissing in Europe for since millennia. And after the Black Plague, nobody said, hey, don't hug or kiss or hold hands or things like that. Now, will we have a better understanding of hygiene and a global understanding of how germs are transmitted? Absolutely. But I think we're going to go back to human behaviors, but we might protect ourselves more with more hand washing or more sanitizing. And I think there'll be a greater attention in stores and public places and arenas and cruise ships and college dorms to, the awareness of how things are spread, and they maybe change their sanitation procedures or whatever may come from it. Because essentially, after all this noise that we've had, now going forward, anybody who gets sick from one of these places, you know they're going to sue. So
Yeah,
it's going to
yeah.
be in the vested interest of all these large organizations to provide healthier environments for people coming together.
Well, I think it definitely could be done too. I mean, and you know, one thing I can say about that is drawing somewhat from a personal experience. I mean, as a gay man, I've been on the forefront of an epidemic for 40 years,
Sure.
and we had to learn how to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still living with it as far as that goes. But I mean, you learn how to make adjustments so that life can go on and that certain things still can continue, just with the accommodations you need to put into place to make sure that, you know, you're not putting yourself at undue risk.
Right.
Right, like protect your health.
I mean, and it's not a case of where you completely abandon everything that you knew from before. You just learn how to adapt. And that's, I think, the important thing here is that we need to learn how to adapt.
Good thing we're adaptable.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Things are very adaptable. And you know what felt really strange at the, you know, a month ago kind of feels commonplace at the moment. Like it doesn't to me, maybe because, you know, I'm here a lot anyway. But I mean, we ate dinner out 3 nights a week. We were always going out to the movies on the weekends. Like, you know, we had a full life in that respect. But is it a hardship for me to stay here? Not really. I'm lucky. You know, I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess. But I do reach out to people, and I do want to reach out to people who are lonely or who have no one to speak to, or who happen to be like my daughter, you know, isolating by yourself. That's really tough. You know, when you can't see people and talk to people or be in a room with somebody who could come and give you a hug. You know, it's scary when you're young and you're by yourself. So, you know, for those people, my heart goes out to them. It really does. There are a lot of people, you know, who are sheltering with their families. And I just the other yesterday, I think it was, I was reading the article where, you know, Bruce Willis moved in with Demi and his 3 daughters. Even though he's married and has 2 daughters with somebody else, he's sheltering with them, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess if the world's going to end, that's who he wants to be with. But
was it a choice, or was he over visiting his kids and then
it was a choice. They made the choice to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. But
yeah,
you know, like
because he didn't choose.
And like I said, you know, who would you choose to shelter with if you had the choice? It kind of really, when things are in chaos, it narrows your focus to laser focus, actually, where you're able to focus better than it's like in a crisis. In any crisis, the first responders, the people who are there, everything goes away except what you have to focus on. And I think that's kind of what this, in a way, has been doing for people, is that they're focusing on themselves a little bit more. And like you said, Sandra, their families, but really going inside and what's important, like what's really
clarifying.
Yeah, well, it's eliminating distractions.
Yeah, let's just eliminate all the noise and figure out.
Well, it helps you clarify your priorities. You know, what is really important to you? What is, you know, vital? And when you talked about choice, Frankie, I couldn't help but think of, you know, and Brent, you went to journalism school like I did, and you probably learned this. You know, when we were writing articles in my day, you know, this was 20 years ago, we were taught to eliminate words like should or could, you know, things that were ambiguity.
That's
when
right.
we were reporting. We're only reporting the facts. And then word choice was also very important, because in my day, you didn't want to create public panic. You didn't want to do these things. Now, that was the way I was trained. And when journalism changed to including the words would, should, could, those things were the reasons that I left mainstream journalism. And one of the things that I invite everybody to look at is read the headlines. Read them and see if they include ambiguity. Words like could, maybe, might, you know, things like that, you know, or you should do this versus this is a good idea or this is a proven fact. Because what I'm seeing, you know, with my dad has the television on all the time. So I sit down and I watch different channels. I watch and I go on the internet and I read Al Jazeera and I go to Toronto and I go to England and I go to Australia, you know, to try to get an idea of what's really happening.
Yeah.
And you really should discount, like there's my should word, but anything that's would, could be, or might, because that's pure speculation. And you can go from speculation to look at the figures from 80,000 people to 800,000 people. You know, that's a big swath.
It's a big swath.
It sure is.
And, you know, so I want to caution people on what you're exposing yourself to, and kind of the, you know, the maybe, could be, might be stories that are out there that are used to fill the airways. But the second one that I thought about, you guys were using different words, and Frankie, you used shelter in place. We've called it lockdown over here. Look at the emotional energy around the words that we used. Are you sheltering in place? Are you staying home because it's safer? Are you under quarantine, or are you, you know, in lockdown? You know, all of those things create different energetic feelings in us.
Yep.
Yep,
And the
they
rebel,
sure
the
do.
rebel and the lockdown would be like, no, I gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. You're right.
So,
all of those words,
so
bring a different emotional charge.
Yep, and how you talk to yourself about this, like, you know, when we talk about how to stay at home to work during this crisis, or during this challenge, you know, crisis versus challenge creates different energetic feelings, is a lot about how your mindset. And I would like to talk to you guys about a successful mindset for this challenge, because I did an interview recently with a submarine commander, because I thought, who better to know about isolation, about, you know, you're 2,000 feet under the ocean in a tin can. How do you handle that? And he had this great thing. He said, San, I have my underway signal. So when the submarine goes, ooga, ooga, you know, ready to prepare to dive, he's like, okay, I'm in my underway mentality, which means I don't think about playing tennis. I don't think about, you know, going to the movies with my kids. He's like, I think about what I can do in this environment, and I purposefully don't think about the things I can't do. And so I brought that home to my family, going, you know, I know, Max, you can't go to swim practice in the gym. Zachary, you can't go to dance and this, but what can you do? And we just have to create a temporary, like, new normal, and have we call it the stay-at-home mindset.
That's interesting, because I went to Hadfield to see what he did, because, you know, when you're in space by yourself for a gazillion months, you know, what do? Well, you play your guitar a little bit. You do, you know, he gets up at the same time every day, and you have a routine that you do. And I think that's really important. It's not sleeping until noon and being a lazy bum, right? It's even if you have nothing to do, you create, like you and I, Sandra, and Brent, you're going to work, but I know you and I, we create something to do every day. We have to. Because I
still have to work. Like, you know, there's no, whether I'm meeting clients or now I do it mostly virtually, even my client is literally a street away. One of the websites I work on, literally a street away, and we are having virtual meetings because she has a big family, I have a big family. We don't want to commingle germs.
That's right. That's right. But the point is that, you know, you can create things and you can have a routine. And I think the routine and the structure help people who panic. You know, get up every day, you have your breakfast at 8, do this. Like throughout the day, you can do different things or exercise, and create that plan for yourself. Because I think for many people, it's comforting to have, even guys in jail have a, you know, a daily routine, right? You have a daily, and it gets you through your day. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's bedtime. Okay, next day. You know, we wake up the first week when we were, you know, sheltering in place, the first week we woke up, it was like being in a science fiction movie. I felt like I'm in a movie. This is like a movie. Like, oh my God, this is like crazy, right? It felt like that. But here we are living our new normal at the moment, whatever that, you know, means for everybody else. But I think it is important to have a routine. It does help people. This morning I read that it used to be 30 million people working from home. Now 50 million people can change their job and work from home. And it's not like they can actually be working and making money, which is a really good thing. You know, 50 million people can do that.
I think the hardest thing about that, Frankie, you know, from what I hear from my neighbors and, you know, a lot of my mom and dad friends, is for those of us that were pre-working from home. Like for me, I have an office. Granted, it's a closet, but, you know, it's an office. Like my computer's in there. I can go in and I can actually shut the door on that closet and sit in my little dark room. But I can do that. Now, my friend Ginger, who's, you know, my son's best friend's mom, she and her husband work out of the house. They have a 4-year-old and a 16-year-old. And the 16-year-old is fine hopping in his room, going on his computer. We actually gave him one from my office computers to use. So he's all set up. But the 4-year-old now has no daycare, has nowhere to go. He's running down the walls. And mom is trying to work from the kitchen table, keep an eye on him. Dad is working from the living room, dining room table. And it's also trying to find a space and trying to find a quiet or a place to think. I think that's what's really causing a lot of my friends who were suddenly working from home to go a little batty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an opportunity there too to find a workflow that would work for that family. And just off the bat, I'm thinking, well, maybe mom doesn't work until noon and watches
Right.
the kid. And then the father starts, he starts early, and then at noon he takes over while she starts to work. There's ways to do things that, you can kind of find. You have to be flexible and creative.
Right. Right.
Right?
And that's one of the
Well,
things, because each of them have, the online classes, online meetings, things like that. It's really, I think, it's a challenge for a lot of families.
I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing people needing to adapt to the notion of flexibility,
Yeah.
which is something that goodness knows in the the way the culture has been going in recent years, there hasn't been a whole lot of. It's with the polarization you've had politically and socially, it's been like, well, you're either for me or against me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in so many ways. And now all of a sudden, that's a luxury people can't afford as much as they could at one point.
It's a good
And
opportunity for people to figure out what their values are, because for me, flexibility was one of my top values, in my top 10, actually my top 5. And I think it's really important to be flexible.
yeah, it's always been pretty high on my list too. And a lot of times when I've been dealing with certain aspects of my life, and I found suppliers or other contacts that were not willing to do it, I would just say, why? Why can you not?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'm making an unreasonable request in terms of what I'm asking for. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that's not our policy, or
It's not the way we do
it's
things.
not the way we do things. That's not in our script, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that made it very easy for me to increasingly turn away from certain sources for certain materials, because I said I want that flexibility in there.
Yeah.
And now that I've got it, now that I think people are seeing the need to have to input in their lives, things are changing, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
You've got kids at home making.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, inflexibility goes hand in hand with fear.
Yeah.
If an employee is afraid of their superior, afraid of getting fired, afraid of getting trouble, they're going to be less flexible. They're going to adhere to the rules. And, when we're experiencing a very much fear-based existence right now, not by choice. We choose to get involved in this. We choose to see how many times we look at the TV or check the news on our phone. I mean, those are actually choices. I don't think people recognize sometimes those are choices. And anything we can do, choices we can make to bring our fear down. Like for me, I went 2 days without watching the news. You know what? People died. Things still happened. I'm not mitigating any of the severity of this. But how did watching the news and getting myself all upset do any good for my family or my business or my body?
Wayne Dyer always said, don't watch the news. He goes, if you can't change it, don't watch it. But
as a trained journalist, I gave up watching the news weeks ago.
Yeah.
Which I thought I would never, ever do. I still get news, from like, say, sources on the internet, or if I hear something on the radio. I mean, I'm much smaller doses.
You do find out
enough to get me by, but in terms of having the television on, no, I've been turned away from TV news now for a couple of weeks, and I feel so much better for it.
And you will. I just wanted to go back to your point there, Sandra, for a sec, and Brent, about the flexibility. The idea that it's not the way we do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take that to the personal level, it's an outdated belief system. I have a belief system that needs to change. And so if I can change that, it's difficult to change. People don't like to change. And that's why change happens best in chaos, because they don't have a choice. And businesses are starting to find out they're not going to have a choice. They, old outdated rules don't apply any longer. But I wanted to make
what I find especially interesting about that too is if they institute flexibility and they discover it, my goodness, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
There's like this little light bulb going off over their head saying, well, if we can change there, I mean, maybe we can change in a whole bunch of other areas and create new opportunities that we never would have dreamed that are going to end up being very profitable for us.
And that's what people are going to
Yeah.
have to do. That's exactly what they're going to have to do. I just wanted to, you've been talking about you've got kids and people have kids at home and it's really kind of difficult for them. Okay, as an older person at home, I now have a husband who's at home.
Would you like to say that convincingly? Because I know you don't see yourself as an older person because you're like, as an older person. Okay, convince us that you're actually an older person at home.
Well, no, I'm just, now I have Dan home during the day who wasn't here before. I had a quiet, the dog was here, but the TV's on. And I'm like, oh my God, like turn that off.
That's why you got to get those headphones that we got. Headphones, connect them to the TV.
But it's just, that's the thing. It's like my routine, because I did work from home. I did my stuff from home, has all changed. Now all of a sudden there's somebody going, what's for lunch? I never thought about lunch, right? Or what's for this or what's for that. And so it is even for people who are empty nesters, it's changing for them too.
Yeah.
Oh, how is it with you and Trevor, Brent?
We're fine. I mean, he's works in an essential service also. So, I mean, our schedules in that regard really haven't changed. I mean, we work opposite hours.
Okay.
So a lot of times we'd be sort of like ships in the night. But, when we get together, we have our same routines like we had before. So it's worked out just fine for the two of us. I mean,
I think kindness is maybe the word of the day too for people. You have to be kind with one another. Some people have a higher sensitivity to what's going on, and other people don't like to be stuck in one place, and other people, they get antsy. So I think with families and children especially, you just got to be a little bit more.
Well, and I'm going to just buzz in here and say, and for the moms, and I'm just going to say, like, in preparation for this, I gave a lot of thought to, like, what are the pros and cons? Well, the pros are I get to spend more time with my kids. I get to spend more time with my dad. We're literally all, in this house together 24/7. But the cons are there are more dishes. There is more food prep. When your kids go to school and they bring their lunches, they throw their trash out and they bring just the lunchbox home to clean. It's harder to provide meals, because we're missing in our stores bread, flour, eggs, milk, all these things. It's very hard for us to get fresh vegetables and fruit. We're just starting after 26 days to be restocked in our grocery stores. We still have no paper products. And that was the other thing, like everybody's laughing about why toilet paper, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? When you have 4 people in my house, boys who eat and poop a lot, we go through an enormous amount of toilet paper because, like, just think about it. The kid used these boys, and my friend has 4 boys down the street. She's like, do you have any toilet paper? I need some. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, our kids used to poop at school. Then they would poop at the soccer place, and they would poop at wherever they were going. They go work out, go to the gym. Now we've got 4 people pooping at home, peeing at home, paper all the time. And, when you have a big family, thank God I have an extra, thing in my garage. I don't have a lot, but I kind of look going, okay, there's no toilet paper at the grocery store.
But of everything, Sandra, of everything that's in the world to get, everybody's zoned in on toilet paper, right?
I think the moms went out there and thought, these kids are going to be coming home, because I can't tell you how much more too, you guys. We clean the bathrooms. We used to clean our bathrooms, the whole house. We've got 4 bathrooms. So we would clean it on Saturday mornings. That was like our routine. Kids, bring your laundry down, clean your rooms. You get this bathroom, I get this one, Grandpa get this one. We do the bathrooms and the kitchen. And we could do that once a week and be fine. Yeah. Now we have to the kitchen has to be cleaned like 2 times, 3 times a week, because all of a sudden now everybody's using everything in the house every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Even here, my dishwasher goes twice sometimes a night. And there's only 2 of us. I mean, it's crazy. Right. But I cook, you make these big meals, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not reasonable to for all of us to go out, especially those of us with larger families. We go out to eat, Frankie. It could be $100, like,
for sure.
That's my food bill for the week. And
I think we're saving money, even though like our grocery bill seems large, like $300, $200, $300. When I think, well, we went out 3 times a week, that might have been a $50 here, there, whatever, right? And you have nothing left. Yeah.
My gas bill, I used to drive between dance and soccer and basketball and swimming and my dad's pills and taking him out to walk around Lowe's, which is his exercise, you know, I used to burn two tanks of gas a week. So $100 in gas for my minivan. I haven't filled up for 3 weeks.
What's your gas prices at now?
We're at $2.99, which is phenomenal because for the longest time we were like around high three, almost $4. So $2.99 for Los Angeles.
That's an imperial gallon. Is that what that is? No,
yeah.
A gallon. Yeah.
No, just a regular gallon.
We're at. I filled up for 57 cents.
Oh my God. Brent, what are you in Chicago?
Well, I don't have a car, so actually I'm saving a lot more money.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to add too, in addition to flexibility, that I think is going to be an important skill, is the power of discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important right now because you're seeing so much conflicting information from so-called official sources, from mainstream media, from independent media. And I think it's going to be very important if people want to make decisions about what they want for themselves and what they want for the society as a whole, to kind of take off the rose-colored glasses that a lot of times we tend to have. If something comes over the news that we don't want to hear, you know, a lot of times we might say, oh, well, they wouldn't do that to us, or this wouldn't happen, or things like that. Well, to me, I think it's a time where we're all going to need to get real more. We're going to have a thicker skin. We're going to have to lose that kind of Pollyanna attitude. And also, you know, learn how to tap into our intuition a bit more, even if it seems seemingly illogical or irrelevant or irrational. There just might be very important information that comes with that. And, you know, when we were talking earlier about the environmental changes, I mean, the clear skies over LA, the clear skies over in India, the return of the swans and the dolphins to the canals of Venice.
Yeah,
I think that's the universe kind of like giving us some clues. You know, that, hey, look at how quickly things can change. Look at how effectively they can change when we put our minds to it, when we state the intent, we don't want certain things to happen anymore. And if you can do it in those areas, think of what other areas you might then be able to.
It's pretty phenomenal, really, when you think
about
it.
One thing that Chicago has had an ongoing problem with was street violence and shootings.
Yeah.
Well, crime here is virtually non-existent right now.
Right, and no school shootings. Think about that. Like, when is the last time? You know, we live our sister high school had a school shooting in November, and you know we lost some students. We haven't had a school shooting in the United States since.
You know, we have had ignorant people going and licking packages in grocery stores and spitting on and coughing on police officers and doing really silly.
Yeah, but at least that's like, you know, it's not like, you know, unloading an Uzi on a middle school.
It's not, but I mean, if somebody died from it, they could.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's always going to be sick, obnoxious, stupid people.
Yeah.
I watch the teenagers, like, you know, like even my kids, you know how they dealt with it the first week? They did the Corona punch. Like you saw it, Frankie. I put it on Facebook.
Cooties. It's the new cooties.
Yep, right. It's like we're using to punch. He runs in the kitchen. My son is setting the table. He punches him in the back, goes, Corona punch, you know?
Yeah.
There's always going to be, you know, something like that. But I think it's a wake-up call. You know, the universe really gave a wake-up call to humanity and said, you know, you need to stop. Like that poem I wrote weeks and weeks ago, Brent, I wrote a poem and I made a meme on it on Facebook like maybe 3 weeks ago. And it was just something really that I woke up in the middle of the night and it was, you know, the universe is tired of us poisoning our rivers and killing our trees and polluting our air. And, you know, the divisiveness, the power struggles, the greed, corporate greed, medical greed, you know, all this thing has to stop. So Mother Nature kind of sent us all to our rooms like a mother and said, okay, you're all going home and you're going to sit there until you figure these things out.
Yeah. You know, I want to just give a shout out. East Africa right now is having an unbelievable locust devastation.
Oh, I saw that. Yes.
Like it's in droves, like the biggest, and it's kind of weird when you think it's like been Passover and there's a locust plague.
Yeah.
You know, but and like their food source, which are cassava, it's going to be devastated. They're not going to have any food, so people should, you know, think about that. I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Passover and also with this being the Easter weekend.
Yeah.
all of this is coming at this particular time. I mean, there's a certain metaphorical aspect to that I find interesting, that, you know, with Easter being a time of rebirth
Yeah.
and, you know, resurrection and ascension and so forth. I think that's really giving us, again, another clue saying, okay, folks, here's your opportunity. You know, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to a certain degree, you know, when Sandra was talking about, Mother Nature sending us to our rooms, to a certain extent, I think on some level, we've been asking for that. You know, we've seen that things have been unsustainable the way they've been going on in terms of the environment, in
Yep.
terms of economics, in terms of social polarization. At some point, we had to just say enough, stop, you know, pause, and consider what you're doing, where you're going, and if you don't like it, then it really is time to push the reset button. And I think that's what we're doing now.
I'm
I
going to
would
bring up
like
one more
to.
thing. I want to bring up one more thing because it can be fun. The conspiracy theories.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah.
They're so exciting.
Well, I've seen quite a few, and I mean, they cover quite a broad range of subjects. Some of them, I will admit, have some plausibility to them. Whether they're true or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Others are just completely off the wall. They're easy to dismiss, and that brings me back to the discernment issue again.
Yeah.
But the thing that also I think that's important to remember that is that discernment carries over not just into these fringe areas, but it carries over into the mainstream press also, because there are some really interesting things that have been showing up that are making me a little more skeptical about what is coming out. For example, one of the major networks apparently recently, when they were covering the situation in the emergency rooms in New York, used footage from an Italian hospital, and they said, "Oh, it was just an editing mistake."
Error.
Okay. Well, to me, again, having been trained as a journalist, that raises a red flag for me
Yeah.
right there. What exactly else are you? How truthful are you being with us about stuff here?
Yeah.
So that whenever, people are watching the news, like I say, I recommend doing that less than they have been. But if they're going to continue to do it, watch it with a skeptical eye. I'm not saying that you should be questioning everything you're seeing, but don't, and the old phrase, don't believe everything you read in the newspapers, or don't believe everything you watch on television. I think that's important right now.
Yeah. My daughter sent this thing out a couple of weeks ago. It was almost line from a Dean Koontz book from 1984, I think, about in Wuhan, this
the virus
Right,
name.
that
virus
hoax,
came out.
the
Yeah.
hoax.
But when I researched it, and I found that half of it was him, half of it was the psychic Sylvia Brown.
Mhm.
And
Right.
people had mixed it all up and put it together and came out and said, "Oh, look at what."
Right, they doctored it.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, Liv, no, that's not right. But
But when I look at some of these conspiracy theories, I enjoy them, and I get a lot of news from alternate sources. And months ago, I received something from one of my Iranian friends from Iran, and she said, people are dying in China. There's this virus. They're sick. They're burning the corpses. They're burying people. They're doing all this stuff. And I have it on my phone. I have the date and stuff like that. And everybody in our friend group is like, "Oh, you're just an alarmist." The lady's a doctor. She's like, no. She's like, this is a really big thing. And like, now you look and you see the figures out of China where, big fat lies, fat, and I love the science behind it that are proving it wrong. Like, yes, we found footage of the urns being delivered, 5,000 urns being delivered. Why do you need all those urns? But the latest map that I saw was of the silicon dioxide emissions outside of the two cities in the Hubei province. And they're like ring fires. And, you can see it from space. They lit up. And the only reason silicon dioxide would be in the air at those concentrations is because you're burning organic material. Well, what are they burning? They're not burning, forests in these portable crematoriums. They're burning bodies. And they were able to mathematically go backwards and say each human body releases about 113 whatever units of this stuff, and multiplied by the amount they're going, oh, we're burning 1,200 bodies a day.
Wow.
And, for me, with the conspiracy stuff, I always love the forensic science that either debunks it or, in this case, validates it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if it was, intentional or it was an accident, that something got out or whatever.
Oh, you know
It's
what my
here.
favorite accident conspiracy theory is from one of my military friends? He said, every time they go into a place and bomb something, he goes, it's always the poor janitor that bites the dust, because he's there, they try to bomb at night or places when there are not too many, civilian casualties or collateral damage. And he's like, you know what? It was probably some janitor that was working in the province where they make all the testing and the medical drug testing that like knocks over some bottle of this virus, gets it on his hand, then goes to the wet market and, buys a cheetah for lunch. It was, but it was funny, but it was like, huh.
Yeah.
Well, huh.
And everybody's like, what the heck's a pangolin?
I had to look it up. I never heard of that thing.
Yeah, I heard of them. But I mean, at first it was bat soup, it was whatever.
Right, pangolin tacos.
I mean, it's like eating an armadillo. Like, why would you? It's bizarre.
I ate a bug larva on a dare in like 3rd grade.
Yeah, I bet my best friend $20 to eat a June bug. He did.
Yeah, you just swallow it whole.
It's disgusting. I laughed and laughed and laughed, but I don't think I ever paid him the $20. Anyways, wow. Well, it's good talking to you guys.
Oh, same
Yes.
here.
Is there any other points you wanted to make before we go?
Nope, I'm good. I gotta run, you guys. I
I
have
would say-
another one at 10 o'clock.
I would say, the important thing is, keep the faith. That sometimes we look at these situations and say, I can't possibly bear it, or this is just going to be terrible. It's more than I can handle. And yet it leads to the proverbial silver lining so many times. So, don't give up hope too quickly.
Let's leave on that. That's a good note. Don't give up.
Right, now I'm gonna leave on mine. Find the fun. Find the funny.
Yeah.
Play a game. The idea that my kids did the Corona punch, I'm not advocating domestic violence, but throw a Corona punch and laugh about it. Laughter really helps a lot.
It does. Yeah. Put the Comedy Channel on.
Yep. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.